When it comes to your mental health, did you know that eating meat is actually one of the best things that you can do to support your brain and body? But why don't most mental health professionals talk about this? Well, in this episode, I found one that finally does, so stay tuned. Welcome back, my friends. My name is Sarah. I am known as Carnivore Yogi. Thank you so much for being here and clicking on today's video. Today, I have an interview with Natalie West, who is a clinical psychotherapist and has been in practice for over 15 years. But what's different about Natalie is that she actually uses meat and a meat-based approach to support her clients who deal with mental illness, depression, anxiety, all types of conditions, which we talk about in this episode. And personally, I have seen a lot of mental health professionals over my lifetime, and not once did anyone ever ask me what I was eating. So I'm really excited to share this conversation with you guys. I hope that you enjoy it as much as I did recording it. And I'm gonna ask you, if you don't mind, please do share this information out with as many people as you can. I feel like it is absolutely vital that we have this conversation, that there are amino acids we can only get in meat that really do support our mental health. And there are so many people out there who are unnecessarily suffering. And so we talk about all of that in this episode, as well as the dogma around vegetarianism and yoga, veganism, all of those things, and how to overcome that. There are tons of topics down in the information section. You can surf around through those timestamps. I've spent a lot of time putting those together for you guys so you can, again, navigate through this episode. And the timestamps are actually brought to you by my two sponsors. The first sponsor is going to be Optimal Carnivore. You can use my code Carnivore Y to save 10% on their grass-fed organ complex or their liver supplement over on Amazon. And we take these every day. There are nutrients that you can only get in organ meats, and they are extremely bioavailable. The best thing you can do, obviously, is to eat organ meats. But if that's not something you want to do, these are just a fabulous option in helping give your brain and your body those essential nutrients and building blocks that it needs. Again, my code Carnivore Y to save over at Optimal Carnivore. The second sponsor of today's episode is going to be Upgraded Formulas. If you're anything like me, you really don't want to take a bunch of supplements that you don't need. You don't want to spend the money, and it's not very healthy for you. So I love Upgraded Formulas hair tissue mineral analysis with a consultation. That enables you to actually test from the comfort of your own home your mineral levels to see if you have a mineral imbalance. And those mineral imbalances can actually cause mental health issues, sleep issues, muscle cramps, fatigue, all of that. And over supplementing can lead to the same issues as under supplementing. So I love their hair tissue mineral analysis with a consultation. You can use my code YOGI or YOGI12 to save on anything on the Upgraded Formulas website. And again, they have wonderful magnesium as well. I hope you guys really do enjoy this episode with Dr. West, and I will talk with you again soon. Bye. All right, guys, thank you so much for coming back and tuning in to today's episode. I am really thrilled to have today's guest with me. We are going to talk about mental health today. So thank you so much for being here, Natalie.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I am too. So if you don't mind, just for my audience members that don't know you, don't know what you do, would you talk a little bit about your professional history, what you do now, all of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm based in Melbourne, Australia, if you've not picked up the accent yet. And I have spent the last 20 years as a clinical psychotherapist, basically combining and teaching people how their minds work. So consciously, unconsciously, and also integration with our body, and also combining diet protocols in that mental health space. So 15 years ago, so I've studied for 4 years, and then 15 years ago, when I went into clinical practice, and, talking about mental health and nutrition was such a foreign thing back then. It was like living on another planet, because it was just never, ever spoken about. So I specialize mainly in helping people, one, understand there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. but you just really need to understand how your mind works, how your body works with your mind and your brain. So brain, mind, body. So that's what I've done for the last 15 years. And I have face-to-face clients, have Zoom clients, and I work with people all over the world.
Amazing. And the crazy thing to me is when we're talking just before I turned the camera on, I've been a lot in the mental health space myself from a young age. When I was 14, I've seen psychotherapists and therapists and psychiatrists and just the whole gamut. And it was I never once was asked about my diet. It was just, let's try this medication. Let's try this medication. There was never a conversation about diet ever.
No, and that's the same here in Australia. So, when I would see people, even as early as 10 years ago, and the first question is, have you ever been told how your mind works, why it does what it does? It's not trying to harm you or, do anything to you. It's working for you, but it's just not doing it in the right way. And secondly, tell me what you eat. And yeah, again, the looks were like, hold on, I've been in therapy for like 5-10 years. No one's ever asked me that question. So it also empowers people to understand that you have a lot of power and you just need to know how to put all of that together.
Absolutely. And what is, people that come to you, what type of diets are they usually on?
Really, really bad ones. So it's generally what I call the SAD diet, so the standard Australian diet or the standard American diet. And a lot of that also comes from people believing that they're eating the right thing, even if someone thinks that, say, a cereal is not junk food. Well, we all know that it is. So it's really just about helping people understand and learn and unlearn what the difference between is feeding your body through a chaotic method or through a calm process. So anyone that comes to me with depression and anxiety, I already know that they're on a very high carb, sugar-based way of eating, because that again feeds the dopamine response. And then, again, you've got your insulin goes up, it crashes. But the most important thing about being labeled with something, and this is a really powerful thing. So I just love to kind of step back a little bit and really allow people to understand how this works. And the most powerful process when we're born, between the age of 0 to 7, we are literally like a video camera. And that's kind of what I want people to see. So when you're a child, your head is a video camera. Your eyes are the lens to the world, as are your ears, and is your mouth, and is your body. So energetically, we also absorb. By the time you are 7, your self-image has already been built in your unconscious processing as a part of your identity. So anyone in authority to you between the age of 0 to 7, that's where you learn everything about yourself. And the most powerful thing, Sarah, is we are never taught as children how to validate ourselves and how to actually understand how to love and honor and respect ourselves. We are taught externally that seeking love, relationships, lifestyle, even what we eat in a family, that becomes a foundation of what we do. And the most important thing too, between 0 and 7, is you don't have any ability to filter out anything that you don't want. So you absorb everything through your consciousness that goes down into your unconscious. And the best way for people to visualize this is your unconscious mind is like a massive roll of filing cabinets. And we are operating most of the time. And like I said, I've been in this for over 15 years, and I can count on one hand the people that I've worked with that have actually operated from a positive self-image, because most people operate from a negative one based on their environment. So if your mind has been given the same data, incoming data, for 20 years, your mind's like, this is what we do. This is familiar. This is what keeps us safe, even if it isn't. Because your mind doesn't think. Your conscious mind thinks, but your unconscious mind doesn't think. It's the most highly reactive tool you own in thought, feeling, and reaction, especially when it comes to self-image and connection to food and how we fuel ourselves.
Yeah, that's fascinating because for me as a child, it was food as a reward, or we're
Yes.
going to use it to soothe you. My parents had a very turbulent relationship and that ended
Yes.
when I was around 13. And, my mother would be the one to try to soothe us, but it would be like, let's have a milkshake before bed, or let's have,
Yeah.
some wafers with peanut butter before bed to get you to go to sleep. And let me pick you up from school with a moon pie and soda because you've had
Yeah.
a hard day. And that was like how I learned food, as a child, is like, this is here to comfort me. And then my dad would be the one that like, let's go on to the diet and let's, he was trying to do the other thing and then she was trying to undo it. So it was very confusing, you know?
It absolutely is. And, you're on point. Food has always been used either, yes, comfort or a punishment. It's the same
Oh,
thing with
yeah.
exercise, and when you're in a really flat, depressed state, and a lot of the time, in I guess most conditionings of current medical and psychology models, we've all been told it's all here, and that your brain's not functioning properly and you have a chemical imbalance. And
Yes.
that's totally not true. Like even Dr. Kelly Brogan talks about that. It's not even in your DNA. So again, when you hear something from someone in authority to you, especially a doctor, because they are put on a level of authority, right? So when someone says to you, oh, you've got depression, but I'm going to write a script for you within 2 minutes to give you SSRIs. Hold on. What's the root cause here? What are we looking at? So that's one of the things that I committed very, very early on. And I think I did share this on Dr. Chafee's podcast, was my mentor said, you need to ask people what they eat, and you need to learn that, and you need to study that connection between psychology and nutrition and the gut-brain connection. If you don't, you'll never, ever, ever empower that person to heal themselves.
Yep. Yeah, it's so true. And that gut brain connection is so huge because one of the things that made me actually start the carnivore diet was that I was diagnosed with IBS and I had a lot of joint pain, but I just had the worst issues with my gut.
Yeah.
And, I was at that point because I had gone off the processed foods and seed oils, and that had helped me come off of medications. But I was kind of considering going back on because I was getting to that depressed place again
Yeah.
and my gut was a mess. And then when I went carnivore, I was only going to do it 30 days. And then at the end of the 30 days, I was like, oh my gosh, I've never felt this mentally clear. I've never felt this happy. And my gut was all better. I didn't have gas or bloating or any of that stuff. And so at the time, I just was like, I didn't think deeply into it. I just kind of said, I'm just going to keep going with this.
Same.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to do this for 30 days just so I can reverse my, insulin resistance. And then 2 weeks in, I was just like, okay, let's just keep going. And that was 2 years ago, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but exactly what you said is what I hear from feedback from my clients. So once they, but the other thing too, it's really important for people to understand when they've been told they have anxiety or depression. Yes, there is an attachment to self-image and how you feel and think and react within yourself. So again, we are not taught how to put our own boundaries in, our own values, and how we actually can self-love and keep those rituals alive. Everything is kind of given outwardly instead of inwardly. So when you tell someone that they have depression and they're like, okay, well, why is this? What is going on within my self-image? Where am I operating from? What are my thought processes? What am I telling myself? But if you are fueling that with high processed seed oils, foods that are not food-like substances, you're not going to be able to get that gap between the connection. You're just fueling the same data. So it's the habit of familiarity. And this is why when I talk about stepping out of your comfort zone, which is your mind's unfamiliar space, it's natural when people go, oh, I know this sounds good. I know I've heard a lot of people do this, but in reality, the minute that you go to step out, your mind and your body will pull you back every time because you've fed the same information and data to it for 10 or 20 years. So it's like, well, hold on. Nope, we're just going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this.
Comfortable, even if it's not healthy for us, it's the comfortable thing to do. And it's, you almost feel like you're going to die when you don't get that chocolate in the afternoon that you're used to having at 3 p.m.
Yep.
It gets to be 3 p.m. and your body's like, okay, we need the 3 p.m. chocolate, and you don't have it. And you do actually have a feeling that you might die without it. When I have clients tell me that, I'm like, yeah, I get it. You just you have to break through that though.
So even with emotions, especially with men, they're never taught to actually go through their emotions. We're always taught to go around them.
Yes.
So one thing that I help people with is understand that your feelings and emotions are valid. Never, ever, ever discount what you feel. You must go through it, because that's where the growth is. But one of the most important things is when someone has had depression or anxiety or any kind of mental health challenge, and I don't like the word mental illness, I think it's a totally it's horrible.
Yeah.
The thing is, if you've been dealing with something for 10 or 20 years, it's a part of your identity, and you believe you've been told that you can't heal that you have to deal with that for the rest of your life. One of the most scary things for people is, hold on, how do I know who I am without this? It's literally being naked and very vulnerable. So a lot of people go, well, this feels familiar to me, even though, as you said before, it's not helping me, it's actually harming me. But the alternative of that is I actually have no idea how to operate without my depression or my anxiety, which is very scary for people.
Yeah. How do you help them kind of get through to that other side? I know it's not really a simple one sentence answer, I'm sure.
Combine both. It's literally about, okay, let's look at the symptoms. Now let's connect those symptoms back to the root cause. And I'll tell you, a lot of the time, I'm going to say 90% of the time, it's our self-image. It's our lack of respect for ourselves. It's not understanding the connection between what we fuel ourselves with. And don't ever discount the fact that even if you have the TV on in the background, every single part of your auditory system is also picking up that negativity.
Yes.
So
yes, thank you.
Turn your TV off, people.
Yes.
Turn your TV off.
Yes.
Put some music on, because you are still recording. Even as an adult, your head is still that video camera. So when you feed and fuel, it's coming from everywhere. So we have to then go, okay, how do I allow my body the gap in the space to start to turn the light bulb on in my head? And the only way to do that, you just can't use psychotherapy or any kind of, other methodologies on its own. You must combine it with removing the chaos that you're fueling your mouth with, getting into calm. Then you create the gaps in the space in the data change. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for me, it was like going to carnivore and getting off of all those other foods. It changed something within me where I wanted to kind of open up to the world more. And I was more conscious of the TV and what was on the radio and what was on in my surroundings. Because my husband used to love to keep the TV on just to have, it was like having a visitor over, and it would drive me insane. For a while, it didn't bother me. But then after I kind of like went carnivore, my head started to clear up. I'm like, I cannot listen to this. This is just not, it just driving me crazy.
Yeah. And the reason for that is, when you were going full carnivore or even just shifting into it, right, you were literally shifting your vibrational state. So I call this thing a state of being. Okay. So a lot of the time our state of being is such in a low vibration. So if you have everything around you that is in a low vibration, TV, anything, negative people, that includes family,
YouTube,
by the way, people,
podcasts, radio,
everything.
Yeah, everything. Yes.
So what we do is when we start fueling ourselves with a high vibrational food, so everything that's to do with an animal-based way of eating is a primal instinct for a human being. That creates a high vibration. So the minute that your body starts to shift, anything outside you that actually it's kind of like it doesn't match anymore, right? So you become so much more aware of your body, what you're absorbing, because when you're in chaos mode, both self-image wise and what you're fueling yourself with from a processed food point, you lose all instincts of what's going to serve you and what doesn't. So this high vibration of shifting into removing anything that is not in a species appropriate way of eating, it creates the new data, it creates the gap for you to actually feel, oh my gosh, look what I have done for myself. And I always say to people who DM me around, you know what, I was in therapy, I just went full on into carnivore, my depression disappeared, my anxiety disappeared. And people even say to me like, oh, I don't want to sound dramatic, but I'm like, oh, you have no idea what you have done for yourself. You have given yourself a gift. And another thing, sadly, what happens is when we move from low vibration and chaotic way of eating, because we know that our mental health, it must come first. And the only way to do that is look at what you're eating and what you're fueling yourself with, as I said, auditory, visual, and energetically.
Yes.
You will start to find people externally for you that will start to ruffle feathers, and that will start to trigger people externally. Now, what we do normally as humans, when someone is triggered externally, we shrink and we back into familiarity. Does that serve us? It makes us fit in, but do we really want to fit in? Because you have one body, you have one set of organs. And I always say to people in the total diet space, it's like you must feed yourself and honor your mental health. Your body will take care of itself in regards to a weight situation. As you know, with carnivore, people kind of go through the weight process first, and that's kind of what they use it for. But then they're like, oh gosh, hold on. I don't have my anxiety. I don't have my depression. What's going on?
Yes, exactly. That's what happened with me. I was like, I want to do this to, I saw some of the physiques. I'm like, I want to do that. And then it shifted all these other things for me, like all the joint pain and the stomach issues and the mental health. And I was like, oh, because I did not lose a ton of weight the way that I wanted to. I didn't get ripped and, the ripped abs and all that. That didn't happen for me, but the other things did. And so that's why I stuck with it. No, I didn't get skinny overnight or anything. But
no, and again,
I didn't really need to, honestly. It's just a woman thing where you want to be as skinny as you think, you should be, but it's not really necessary.
No, it's not. And again, we are social media energetically, that's another part that we really end up on a slippery slope with. And I think even just historically as women, growing up, everything is externalized. We go on a diet to fit in our size 8 jeans. But the other thing is, no one ever learns to go, okay, so if I'm going to go to an event or a wedding, I'm going to punish my body. I'm going to calorie restrict just for an external event, right? I say to people, okay, let's just turn that around. Let's just be prepared for life and treat your mental health as a number one value, because you get that right, you're not going to care about getting into a size 8 bikini to go on a holiday, because how you feel about yourself and what you do for yourself is the most critical part of being a human being. You do have the power to do it, but we've just got to allow people to understand you've kind of been disempowered a lot. And we need to help people. And this is what I love about our carnivore community. It's about collective empowering people to go, you know what, I can do this.
Yes. Yeah. And that's really why I started a podcast and wanted to do all of this, because I was seeing so many amazing things happen for me that I'm like, how can I not share this? I mean, I've been literally crippled with these mental health issues. That's probably the bigger issue than my weight. My weight was always an issue, but the mental health was probably causing the weight, because I was self-medicating with the food. And it was like, as soon as I switched the diet and got things better, that just wasn't this huge burden that I had to carry around anymore. And I really want that for other people. I've interviewed people, a good friend of mine. I don't know if you've met Emily Penton.
Actually, I haven't, but we've connected, and
Oh, good.
her story is just phenomenal.
She's been on my channel a couple times. We're going to do another interview in a few weeks to do another update because her story she was one of the people that just brought me to my knees of,
Yeah.
just struggling with bipolar and MS, and finding carnivore and being completely in remission. It's like unheard of.
100%. And
Yeah.
this is the thing, and I've been battling like an uphill, struggle for 15 years to try to allow the I guess the standard medical industry to understand that as a human being, I don't think it's so far out there to understand that meat as a source, as a species appropriate way of eating would ever harm anybody. Like, we're talking about the fact that, the food diet triangle or whatever we're meant to be eating is in itself is making us sicker and sicker and sicker. And, mental health is on the rise. Every single autoimmune disease is on the rise. Type 2 diabetes is just manic. Yes. And we're like, well, hold on. What are we doing? Like, it's not just all a psychological issue. We are fueling ourselves with chaos. Now, how do you expect any depression or anxiety to disappear if that's how you're fueling yourself?
Well, it's so funny when you're talking about how we raise our vibration by eating the animal foods. I'm sitting here like, my background is a yoga teacher for 12 years. And wow. I was vegan for 2.5 years when I first became a teacher because I thought that's what I really, really needed to do to be a good yoga teacher.
Yeah.
And my health completely failed, and that's really when I sought out more medications. That's when I went on a benzo. That's when, I was on probably 5 or 6 different meds as a vegan. And yeah, it was horrible. That was the worst mental health time in my life, was my 2.5 years of veganism. Yeah. But I really believed this kind of myth that floats around in the yoga community that it's a high vibrational state to not eat meat. And it's, the most compassionate and caring thing you can do is to not eat meat. And thank goodness I've connected with people like Rob Wolf and Diana Rogers and, to understand regenerative agriculture is the better way. And 100%. That there is millions of animals that get killed in monocropping and traditional farming. There's no bloodless diet. It just is like it's all a fairy tale, honestly.
It is. And you've hit the nail on the head. And I think, I've had a girlfriend of mine who was vegan, and she had a practitioner that she went to. And obviously being a friend, I cared for her from that space, but I wasn't in the carnivore land at that time. But thank God she went to this practitioner, and he basically said to her, if you don't eat meat, you're going to die in 5 years. Like he that was it. Like, she was breaking down. Yep. And she did that. She went and got mince, filled it with butter, ate 1 kilo of mince. And she said to me, it was like my brain just went on. And now I've helped her through into the carnivore space, because obviously there was a bit of depression and anxiety and stuff. But however, I caught up with her yesterday, and it was funny you just say what you said, because there was another lady there who's actually was vegan. And she said exactly the same thing about, I've been told that meat is a low vibrational way of eating. And, my girlfriend was like, well, this is where I was, and now this is where I am. And she's like, you look phenomenal. And even my girlfriend, who was the vegan, who's now pretty much full carnivore, had said, I have never, ever felt so free in my mind and my food choices. I don't think about food. I eat when I'm hungry. My brain says, this is when I eat. This is when I stop. She said, do you know how much time I have back in my day? Not just ruminating and even going to the supermarket. She's like, Natalie, it takes 15 minutes.
Yeah,
I'm like,
you don't have to shop for produce that you're going to throw out anyway. And
correct. And she was kind of like, she said to the lady yesterday, I haven't eaten vegetables for, over 10 months. And she's like, I'm not dead and I'm okay. And, you know, every single person, I think, this is the challenge that we have. We have been so dogmaed into thinking that that's a part of a human-based diet. You know what? It might be for some people, and that is okay. But I'll always come back to the space of, if you were eating a certain way, and you are going to lack nutrients in a vegan diet, it's not
There's
deniable,
no way
right?
around it. Yeah.
And again, if you have a belief structure that is also harming your mental health, that is also something that you need to look at, because you are in your body. This is your life. How are you going to choose to operate every day? And again, scratch the surface of what we hear. And I think Rob Wolf and Diana are just the most amazing human beings in doing that. And I grew up on a farm, so I know exactly how animals are treated. They don't suffer. That's a whole actual, you know, if you get regenerative agriculture and proper farmers, go and ask them, go and speak to them. And it's actually, I'm actually wanting to do my own podcast called the Carnivore Psych, where I'm actually wanting to interview, we've got obviously the agriculture here with meat and, you know, the farmers and things like that. And I'm actually been talking to the CEO of the agricultural industry here for meat, and also debunking the myth of the fact that, you know, meat has antibiotics in it, you know, and, you know, when a cow is given antibiotics, I'm like, no, that's what the liver is for, because as a human being, when you have antibiotics, it goes through the liver. It doesn't stay in the meat. That's just a total myth as well. But again, the practices and the standards of understanding what it is and the strict guidelines of what actually has to happen for a cow to be killed and then to actually come to market for human, you know, nutrition. There's all very strict protocols. You know, they're not just pumping cows full of antibiotics and then they send them off and you're eating that. That's just not true.
No. And like I said, so much of the vegan stuff, unfortunately, is fairy tale. And I bought into it. I believed it, but a lot of it is not true. And I get attacked so much because of the name that I chose. And I chose it for a reason, because I also get a lot of people that are yoga teachers or prominent in the yoga community, and they're suffering with mental health. And I've spoken about this a million times on my podcast, and my listeners are like, oh, she's going to say it again. But, you know, and I talked with Dr. Chafee about it, but so many of my friends that are in the yoga community are really struggling with a lot of health problems. Mental health is at the top of the list of what my yoga friends are. Teachers, you know, that I will see them teach a class and try to act cool and then be sobbing afterwards, you know, or they have to call in. You know, one of my friends owns a studio. He's a meat eater, but he owns a studio, and he always is telling me, you don't understand the kind of drama I have to deal with just between my teachers, of like, someone's just having a bad mental health day, so they can't teach. And then I've got, you know, he's like, it's like a juggling act. And it's because they are trying to subsist on just plant foods, you know, on a high carbohydrate, plant-based diet. And they're just suffering so badly. And I hate it. I don't want anyone to have to suffer, you know?
No. And it's one of those things too, where they have such an identity space of being a yoga teacher, and that's the attachment. Yeah. So on a day-to-day basis, there is so much confliction going on in their heads, because I tell you right now, I know a lot of the vegans that I've worked with instinctively have all said to me, I know that's where I need to go. I know, but it's the identity that I have created that is then going to cost me that growth period of going, you know what, I've put this out into the world. Now I'm doing the opposite. And that literally stops people in their tracks, because they don't want to actually come out and say, you know what, this works for me, and this is what I need to do for my own mental health. And we are not taught how to respect our mental health. We're just not. And I always say, as we go through the ruffling of the feathers of other people, and, you know, again, I say to people, if you go out to a restaurant and someone gets offended by your steak, or why, because you're not having chips, be mindful of how you interact with that energy. That's their stuff. That's okay. Yes. But when you start getting thoughts, feelings, reactions, and opinions from people, They're not in your body. They are not in your head. They are not allowed in there. You're allowed in there.
Yep.
You do that. And I also say to people too, be very, very mindful of who claps for you.
Yes.
When you are healing you.
Yes.
And sadly, it's a lot of our friends sometimes and family members that will dump all of their stuff. So remember, everything that we see externally is a mirror back to ourselves.
That's so helpful, because I think one of the biggest things that people struggle with when they transition over to a lifestyle like this, let's just not even say carnivore, but let's just say a sugar-free lifestyle where we're not going to eat processed foods. We're not going to eat desserts,
Correct.
just even that simple, because I think there's a lot of benefits to doing that. My family pushed back huge, holidays for years were an issue. This last year was the first holiday that they weren't hounding me to, oh, are you going to eat this? Are you going to try this? Are you going to try, it's like, they finally understand that I just don't want to, because I don't like how it's going to make me feel. And they have seen me not leave the house for a month at a time. They have seen me in the pits of depression. And it's like, now that I have something that's going to help me not be that way, why are you not supporting it? And it's because they are still highly addicted to those foods. They know it. And it makes them very uncomfortable to see someone who's turning those things down and living a healthier lifestyle. It's not that they don't love me. It's just that that's a thing within them, I think, that is making them very uncomfortable.
Well, it is. It also shines a light on when someone steps into their own health and they start to really grasp that power. That will then again shine a light on people's own, like whether it's lack of motivation or lack of care or self-respect, but that's okay. But what we have to do is understand that no one can trigger you without your permission. So it's also around going, okay, I hear you. Do I engage or do I not? And the other thing too, that's really important, I want people to also really value, is I have a lot of people that DM me and say, oh, I cheated today. I'm like, no, you didn't cheat.
No.
You chose.
Yes.
There's two different sets of data there, right? The familiarity of cheating comes back to your self-image because you've like, oh, I've goffed off the bandwagon and I've cheated. No. If you keep going with that energy, then that lowers your vibration. So then you're 5 steps back and then you need to ramp back up again. Whereas if you just say the cheat word does not exist, it does not exist. It's like, this is what I chose. Now, if you chose that, whatever it is, listen to the feedback. So stop getting in your head around, oh, I cheated and I'm really bad, or whatever words you want to call yourself.
Yeah.
Stop, create a space and go, why? And now what do I believe? So again, cheating can come from an external space of people going, oh, yes, I told you you wouldn't stick to it.
Yep.
You chose. It's a far more powerful way to go, you know what, I actually chose that. Now, if you've been on a carnivore way of eating for quite some time and you go and eat some bread, and I'm just referencing a client now because this was last week, ate bread, ended up in a depressed state for 4 days.
Yep.
I'm like, great.
There's your data.
What have you learned?
Yep.
So it's like, oh, yeah, I don't like that.
Yep.
Now let's go back to the minute, move minute by minute out of that.
I love that. And, this is a thought I had, and I've had this with a few of my clients. Part of me wonders if something like we were talking about earlier, where we're comfortable with certain feelings and situations, that sometimes people are comfortable being caught in that cheat, do better cycle.
Yes.
And all the guilt and the shame that comes with, oh, it was a cheat, that's a familiar feeling and a comforting feeling for them, even though it's negative and it's not helpful. That's another way people kind of get stuck in that cycle, I think.
100%. It is familiarity.
Yeah.
So again, we have to make sure that we've got 1 foot in familiarity and 1 foot out.
Mhm.
So when we're out, that's where the growth happens. So, people try to go around the process or, quick pass what's going on. It's like, no. You have to go through every single uncomfortable situation, because what it does, you learn about yourself. You learn why you want to discount yourself. You learn about what self-image you're operating from. Now, if you continue to lean out into that familiarity all the time instead of leaning into uncomfortability, you're going to do the same things. And this is the thing. So many people say to me, Natalie, I know what I need to do, but I just can't do it. I keep doing the same thing over and over and over and over. I'm like, well, that's the data that you've given your mind. It's the same with the dopamine reaction. If you feed your body dopamine responding way of eating, or even TV, internet, porn, they're all dopamine reactions. So we actually now live in such a dopamine dominant world.
Yes, we do.
So that then lowers all your other neurotransmitters. The one most important thing is, why does meat in itself have 9 of the most perfect amino acids that we need as a human being? That's not by accident.
Nope. I agree. And that the post I put up today was funny. You saw it where I said, when you hear someone talk about their mental health for 30 minutes and then they refuse to eat meat.
Yeah.
Someone commented under that and said, well, wouldn't you say that it's actually just because you've taken out the chemicals that's true? And I said, no, it's because there are amino acids you can only get from meat that your brain needs in order for you to not have mental health issues. And he was
100%.
like, oh, okay.
It's yeah. And this is the thing, it's really hard to kind of even energetically explain to someone that's kind of, they've removed the processed foods and they're kind of on a borderline of going, okay, I'm going to go into carnivore. It's really hard to energetically explain to someone what you feel and how you feel, and really kind of saying superhuman version of yourself is probably the best way. But your brain needs animal fat because it is 70% fat. But the other thing is, if you are feeding your body externally with glucose and carbs and sugar, that's a sugar burning body, right? So you can see the difference between someone who eats a lot of sugar versus a fat adapted body.
Yes. And
uses ketones. One caveat I would like to also say, especially for someone who is in maybe bipolar space or schizophrenic space that has on medication, you must make sure that, because transitioning out of that and into your brain to use ketones, it's a very, very powerful source. So it can actually make a difference in relation to your dosage and actually how your mind and your brain and your gut use those. So if anyone is on that, they definitely need to make sure, in conjunction with their practitioner, to understand the very quick key that happens when you go into using ketones instead of using, sugar and things like that for your brain. And also, if you have a practitioner that is not willing to actually help you come off them, you need to go and find someone else. You need to either find a carnivore doctor or a low carb doctor who understands the ketogenic process. I think medication in the short term, I think some people need that, to just calm them down, especially in a space of if they're going to harm themselves.
Yeah.
But they've always only ever been designed, and if you look back at the history, it was only ever meant to be short term, but to help people treat the root cause. But if you're not including the root cause as nutrition and what you're fueling your body with, you're never, ever, ever going to win, ever.
No. Yeah, I think that's really important. And same goes for thyroid too. I've seen people have, they go keto or even carnivore. Sometimes just keto is enough. And they start not needing as much thyroid medication, but they're still taking too much. So they feel even worse.
Correct.
And it's not the diet, it's the fact that they need to lower their dose of thyroid medication because they're on too much of it. And if you've ever been on too much thyroid medication, it's like
I have
beating out of
a
the
client
chest.
like this. It's like, oh my God, it's like I'm on speed. I'm like, whoa, okay. Just
it's like you need to go and work with your doctor to take those things down for sure.
100%. And I've got a good friend of mine. She had Hashimoto's and was basically told, just get your thyroid out, and went carnivore and reversed it.
Wow. Yeah.
And even with metabolic health, Sarah, I think one of the other big things, we've also got to look at, we've got mental as in self-image, understanding, giving ourselves the power to understand how this works. And every single human being walks around in a waking state of hypnosis. We are hypnotizing ourselves every day in that familiarity, right? So once you understand how this amazing machine works, in conjunction and alignment with your body, there is an amazing, amazing way that you'll never, ever experience before. And you are in control. Exactly. You understand your thought patterns and you don't attach them. They're not a part of you anymore. But being carnivore, that just accelerates that ability to do that.
I agree. And it's like, for me, it's just opened up a different world when I'm not in eating these foods that are like giving me this dopamine reaction constantly. I'm just fueling my body with the nutrients that it needs. My world has opened up, and I have like a private group of members, and
amazing.
I do live streams and talk with them. It's all ladies. I have had one man joined, and I was like, okay, that's fine. But he didn't stick around super long, but we're always all posting things in there. We post a lot of like Joe Dispenza talks and Abraham Hicks and Louise Hay. And we're
amazing.
just, I always am encouraging them, if you're in your car driving or if you're cleaning or you're doing something, have something positive, because you have to continue to feed this mind and this body with positive things, positive affirmations. And I've gotten into quantum physics a lot over the last year. It's my new
amazing
passion. I just got certified as a quantum health coach.
Oh, well done.
And one of the cool things I learned about is the water network in the body.
Oh.
And there have been all those studies that show, different types of music and the effect it has on the water, and different types of talking to the water of, if you're saying these nasty things, the kind of patterns that the water make are just really ugly. But if you're having these beautiful words and thoughts and vibrations to the water, they just make the most beautiful patterns. And our body is comprised mainly of water. And so we have to think, that's water in a petri, in a dish. What about the water in my body? What am I doing to it when I allow myself to have negative people in my life? When I listen to the news and all this negative stuff, like, the food is extremely, extremely important, but we have to look at these other things as well. So I love that you talk about that.
100%. So when I talk about the whole circle of metabolic health here, we obviously have the self-image component, but you also have, what are you drinking? Mm-hmm. And understanding the energetic reactions with that. But secondly, it's sleep, it's hormones, it's everything. Even if you're not sleeping properly, your cortisol is through the roof. Mm-hmm. So that's why people also push, they're like, oh, my body's not losing weight. I'm like, well, you're not sleeping. So get out of your body's way. And this is the thing. Our bodies are an amazing, they're just mind-blowing what they're capable of doing. We push and punish so hard, and then we wonder why we don't get the feedback that we need. Yeah.
Right.
So water, back to that. I don't know if you in America, you have fluoride or chlorine in your water.
Oh, everything here. We get spring water delivered to the house in glass. That's the only thing my family is allowed to drink, because the water here has got fluoride and pharmaceuticals and all kinds of junk in it. It's terrible.
100%. So we have the same here. So I have a machine on my tap that literally takes all of that out. That's one of the most crucial things. But also on the other side of that, if anyone is ever drinking out of plastic, I don't care if it's BPA, pathwates, bad. So there all is that connection as well, that we must be really mindful of. If you look at tribes and Inuits and things like that, they don't drink out of plastic. They literally drink from a waterfall, and that is conducted electrolyzed water. So again, understanding, is it chaos or is it calm? And when I have clients that stand at work and it's 4 o'clock and they're like, okay, I can either choose to go eat my steak or I can go and choose a muffin. I actually get them to actually go into their body and actually think about how they feel and visualize themselves. Okay, if I eat that muffin, what's going to happen in my body? So you can actually change your state of being like that, like in an instant. So it's like, you can choose that, but I want you to go into your body and get out of your head. And how are you going to feel in 45 minutes versus eating your steak?
Yep.
That's a powerful choice.
That's a huge choice. And I think that's, like I said, my family is like every year, well, what cake should I get you for your birthday? I'm like, I don't want a cake.
Just give me a
want
tomahawk, please.
Yeah, exactly. Steak, not cake. I just, I would like it if we could just spend some time together.
Correct.
That's what I would like. I don't care about the food. And they're finally like, okay, we'll just have a nice time and come over and spend time. But it took a long time. But for me, it's like, yeah, it's my birthday, but I don't even really want to, I don't want to feel bad on my birthday. And that's so funny. We have to live by example, because my husband I didn't tell him I was carnivore for the first 4 months. I just kind of did it.
Just do it.
Yeah. I knew he was going to think I'm crazy, because I've done raw vegan. I mean, I'm the crazy. I have a water lab in my kitchen. I put like an infrared light on top of my water before I drink it. And he thinks I'm certifiable. But but he sees my health in a good place, so he just is like, cool. But yesterday was his birthday, and he was like, I want to get barbecue and I want to get all this stuff. And I was like, great, I'll get the brisket with with no sauce or seasoning on it, fine. But he called me and he said, you know what, I don't want to feel bad, it's my birthday, and I just want, can you just make that wild salmon that you always make? And that's what I want to have. And I don't even need dessert. I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, I just don't want to feel bad. And so I was like, wow, it's cool when that kind of wears off on your family members in that way. It really is.
It is. And it's a great point you bring up, because, we are so conditioned to celebrate around food. And this is where we move from conscious eating into unconscious eating. So most of the time when we're using food as a connection point, we're so unconscious, because we're talking, we're drinking, we're just consuming. And the minute that you're like, you know what, I actually feel amazing as I am, I don't need to use that to connect, which again ruffles feathers for people at the most time. But you've just got to stand your ground. You must honor your own physical and mental health, and allow just people to watch your growth, and allow people to understand what you choose, which is so important. So don't shrink yourself to fit into a room. If you want to eat a steak and you want to eat 3, just eat them.
I agree. I completely agree. Yeah.
Absolutely. I hope that's helped people understand a little bit more about their mind. And, you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. I always have people, say to me, oh God, I think I'm just going crazy. I'm like, well, no, but
it feels that way sometimes, though. It really does. When you're in that place and you're so foggy and cloudy, you do feel like this is it. I felt that way so many times before, and I didn't know there was a lifeline out there for me. So it's like,
well,
I'm
the other thing
so glad there's people like you.
Thank you. Well, the other thing is too, I just really, the last takeaway, I guess, for people to know is, in the space of when we're around depression or anxiety or anything mental health related, a lot of the time it comes with a very heavy energy, because that's the way that society has given it. Yeah. So there is lightness in it, because the lightness is in the awareness to go, hold on, if I've been doing this, and then I'm starting to open my mind and I'm hearing this feedback from people who have experienced it, especially someone like even Amber Hearn and Emily, told bipolar, never, ever, ever being able to be healed. Now, that's happening in front of you for a reason. So a lot of it is just letting go of the preconceived notion of what you've been told. It's stepping into, what is the, do I believe about myself? and trusting and just basically giving yourself that self-love and self-care, and reaching out to people like you and everyone in this community that is so open and,
Really, we
ask the
want to help.
question.
Yeah.
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 I don't want to see people in a fog of depression
No.
and anxiety. Like I said, I get so many people messaging me saying, I went carnivore, I did it on my own, I jumped in. My side bonus, anxiety and depression disappeared.
Exactly. I feel like I've heard that so many times. And, that's what kept me going in times when I was like, this is so hard. And there's so much pressure from family members and other people in my life to have the cake and have the ice cream and celebrate and enjoy the holiday. It was like, I don't want to go back to feeling that way.
Yeah,
And I know now I have a choice. And that's one of the most
absolutely.
empowering things in the world, honestly, is to know that you do have a choice in how you feel.
Yes, you do. And one little sentence I help clients with. So when they're at family events and they feel like they're pressured and you don't want to get into a long-winded conversation, you just say, I'm okay now. Thank you. That's
Great.
it. That's simple.
And just kind of draw the boundary. And
That's it.
yeah. I like to try to make myself helpful. I'm like, what can I help you do in the kitchen? Can I help clear the table and do the dishes? Like what, that's,
Yeah.
I just think of like, all right, let me just get myself busy so I can help them and they could stop worrying about what I'm not eating or eating,
Yeah. And the other thing too is self-justification. Like I always, help my clients with, you don't have to justify yourself to anybody. If you were doing what you were doing and it's working for you, you don't need to do anything other than just honor yourself. You can hear people, but don't take it on board. Just hear it, keep it away at a distance, but don't embed it. Because again, energetically, you will absorb stuff even when you're not paying attention.
So true. Man, I feel like I've had like a therapy session. I feel refreshed and light and happy. And
Yay, thank you.
This has been so cool.
But you know what, just in saying that, Sarah, I think, again, you should be really, really proud of yourself for going down the journey that you've gone down and really doing what you're doing, because there is nothing more when you've given yourself that gift and where you've come from to where you are now. Like, honestly, you should be so proud of yourself.
Thank you. Well, I've had a lot of amazing support and people like you that I have not had to do this alone. That's the other wonderful thing about this is there's people out there like us that we want to see people succeed. We want to see people feeling better and living to their full potential. We really do.
Absolutely. And it's capable. We see it day in, day out. And, even Rivero is one of the most amazing sources for people to go to. Like, mind blown.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great. If you need motivation, go you can just listen to those videos all day. And that's one of the things I did when I first started Carnivore. The only podcast that was out there was the Carnivore cast with Scott, and he had a new episode every week. And that just kind of kept me going. And then I went and tried to follow as many other accounts as I could that were doing carnivore or even just keto. And that's how I got through that first bit of time there, was just like, I just surrounded myself with as many people that were having success and doing this and in the lifestyle as humanly possible. And that is what really kept me going.
Absolutely. And I love, what you were saying too with your clients. If you're in the car, put something on in the background that actually, even if you're not even concentrating on it, as I said, remember, your body is in that absorbing state. So, if you're falling asleep on the couch and you've got the TV on, everything is bypassing your conscious mind and it's going into your body. So again, don't have your phone in the room like that at night with your pineal gland activated. Just be really mindful. We absorb everything, whether we want it or not, until we become conscious enough where unconscious, we're actually driving the boat instead of the other way around.
Agreed. 100% agreed. I love it.
Thank you.
How can people find you if they want to message you or work with you or any of that?
Absolutely. So I'll send you, my Facebook and my Instagram and my website. So what I do for people, I have a Let's Start Here little tab on my website. So it's a 30-minute free introduction. Let's start now. Just have a chat, see where you are, because one of the most important things with the work that I do, every single person's mind's unique and their language patterns are unique. So, it's not a one size fits all, because I have to see people, hear them, see what's going on for them to understand how to actually work with them. So getting them the right tools and the strategies for themselves, and just really hear where they're at. And we can have a chat and go from there. So it's pretty simple.
Cool. Well, I will link all that in the show notes
Thank
for anybody
you.
watching, or if you're on YouTube, it'll be in the information section. So this has just been so lovely. Thank you so much for being
Thank
here
you,
today.
Sarah. Thank you so much. Have a great Saturday night. Yeah.
Yeah. And you have a beautiful Sunday day.
I will. Thank you. Going out for a steak.
Awesome. Enjoy.
Thanks, hon.
You're welcome.